So, guys, welcome to the session. And we will close the doors a little bit. If Mark would be so nice to help us look at him, you know? That's why he's my mate since 2 months. Anyway, let's talk about, consortiums. You know, and does it make sense, not sense? You know, what should we do? How should we do it? And for this, I'm really honored to have these senior experts sitting next to me and supporting me in to actually giving their view to you. And I hope you'll get something out of it. So let's see. And for this, yes, I'll do a quick round of introduction. May start.
Hi, my name is Denise Wood. I'm a partner at Greenberg Traurig Law Firm based in Washington, D.C. I have spent about 15 years in this industry. I spent about 3.5 years in-house running the network infrastructure legal team for Amazon Web Services, and then went back into private practice. So in my current practice, I spend about 75% of my time doing submarine cable transactions, whether it's building the consortium and then negotiating the agreements relating to that and the supply contracts, cable landing stations, et cetera, or the secondary transactions, including IRUs, securing anchor tenants and so forth for those systems. The other 25% or 30% of my practice is in space, where I also guide clients on really interesting projects like lunar landing missions and direct-to-device communications from low Earth orbit. So work a lot on the regulatory side in terms of licensing and securing landing party permits to land in the United States in particular, and then the same type of licensing, but in the satellite context.
Thank you so much, Denise, and fantastic having you. And trust me, we'll make sure that you'll be on your flight back to DC on time. Nadia, welcome back again. How are you?
Hi, Eric. Doing fine. Thank you. Hope you are as well. Hope you didn't party too hard last night. Introducing myself again. Nadia Ribeiro. I'm a senior counsel at PLMJ's TMT practice. My work is mostly related to telcos and telecoms infrastructure. And this includes obviously submarine cables. And I've also worked in the industry with a submarine cable operator. So I have dealt with consortia, and then also all the underlying agreements, more commercial agreements. And I also work with other types of fiber operators and other infrastructure operators like mobile, and also moving on to space, and more on the regulatory side as well, but also with other digital related matters like AI, cybersecurity, data protection.
Nadia, thank you. Is anything you're not working on?
I would have to think about that. I will get back to you.
And thank you for joining. I know you have a very tight schedule, but at least thank you so much for being with us online. So thank you so much. So I go to the gentleman right from me, and I'll give him his word.
Hi. First, thank you for the invitation. My name is José Barros, and my background are international connectivity and submarine cables. And I'm here today on behalf of the Observatory of Critical Infrastructures in Portugal that play a role and is giving good contributions for this kind of discussions. Thanks.
Perfect. And honor having you again, as every year. So thank you so much.
This was a short one.
I know.
Right.
I know, but thank you. You could make it. Luis, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, and obviously thank you for letting us have the opportunity to present ourselves and for the invitation by the carrier community. Louis Carver, I represent, I guess, 3 companies in one, Afrix Telecom, Barcelona cable landing station, and of course Medusa. I think we discussed Medusa a little bit yesterday. It's our little baby coming on, coming on online this year. But let's go ahead and speak a little bit about what we do in Africa. Today we have something like 70 POPs across the continent. We are, I think, believe in 50 countries where we are available and we operate. We today have 12 operating licenses in Africa, and I believe I would say that I can safely say that by the end of the year we will have at least 15 operating licenses. We also peer. We've been discussing peering, I believe. We peer in 7 IXs in Africa, and the network itself is fully meshed. So most of the traffic within Africa remains within Africa. The POPs and routers speak together with each other, and they don't route out of the continent whatsoever. So which is obviously cuts down on latency and so on and so on. We also, I think, had a brief discussions on cable cuts. Obviously, being in Africa, most of the cables route around the continent, east and westwards, going north. We discussed also, I believe, the cable cuts that happen in the entrance of the Suez Canal, the Red Sea. That cut, well, we just route around the other side with a bit of added latency. And then we had another cable cut on the west coast, entering the mouth of the Congo River and in Abidjan. So then it routes down to Cameroon, and Cameroon across to Fortaleza, Brazil, up to Ashburn, and then back across to Europe. So we try to secure the network in the best possible way with some added latency, sometimes during various incidents. But in the end of the day, we're happy to what we're doing in Africa.
Mm. Thank you. And last but not least, and ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, I'm a Dutch guy, right? And even if I don't look, but I'm a Dutch guy. So I'm now happy, finally, that there is another Dutch guy on the panel. So I'm very happy. Martin, please.
Thank you for the invitation, Eric. My name is Martin Prins. I'm the ambassador for the Dutch Subsea Cable Coalition. And the Netherlands has had some juicy period already, actually. We're still the 4th largest interconnected city in the world. And we're closely followed at this moment by Singapore. Singapore is really, really adding up speed. And what does interconnectivity look like? And to give you an idea how big is, I mean, Equinix alone has 11 data centers in the Netherlands. Digital Realty has 12 data centers. Amazon, I think, you don't have data centers, but there's a local zone coming very shortly in somewhere in Amsterdam. Our biggest interconnected data center is from Digital Realty. We have 170 carriers in that data center. So you must imagine how ISPs can work their way out there. Pretty interconnected. The peak traffic for internet at MSX alone has been 14 terabits per second in December last year.
How much?
14 terabits per second. And for the whole country, the peak traffic has been 26 terabits per second only for internet. This excludes interconnection between data centers and between networks. This all started in the 90s somewhere. And we'll go there.
A couple of months ago, huh?
Yeah.
A couple of months ago for me.
And actually, it really boils down to, because there was a real nice consortium being built by incumbents, and they built the TET-14 system. It was a system from the first system from over the Atlantic to Europe mainland, and that's what
TET-12, TET-13, TET-14, yeah.
So what is the coalition that I'm heading up? It's a coalition of it's actually a PPP or of a public-private participation coalition. It embodies the Amsterdam Internet Exchange, Netherlands Internet Exchange, Digital Realty, Equinix, the NRNs in our area, and also the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Water Management and Infrastructure. So we work together to promote the Netherlands, because if we look at the growth of data that we expect in the Netherlands in the coming 10 years, we will be up to 4 about 4.1 petabits per second, which is a 35% CAGR on a yearly basis. And that's immaculate. So that's kind of justifies the landing of 2 new intercontinental cables in the Netherlands. We now have 11 landings in the Netherlands, way smaller, by the way, than Portugal has at this moment. But we're ready for you.
Good, thank you. Fantastic having you. So moving into it, guys, as we said, we want to make sure that Denise gets her flight and that you get your lunch, right? And I have my fun, right? There we go. Okay, Luis. Oh, to you. Do you think that has the consortium model, which has played, of course, a pivotal role in the subsea development for over, let's say, more than 25, 30 years, retained its relevance in today's landscape, or should we go back to it? Is it dead? What do you think?
Well, speaking from a producer perspective,
yes,
we are, if we can call it a solo artist, we decided that we would deploy Medusa on our own. We didn't want to take that road. Obviously, we had people knocking on the doors.
You just said money. That's it. Spending.
The thing that you must look at also is the distances of the fibers that are coming online. We talk about, let's talk about Africa with Equiano and with the two Africa cables. So basically, they're very long cables, and I guess the OTTs are brought on board various partners to go into that venture. But as far as I can see, as far as we can see from a Medusa perspective, that we don't want to take that road. It's whether it's, as I said, it's viable for them or not for us, and so on and so on. We just did not want to take that road, pure and simply because we are the master of our own destiny in short. We discussed also, well, Medusa is coming online, so we're very, very happy with that. And now, I believe that also Damien touched on the fact that we will go down the west coast of Africa as well. That is Medusa 2. There are negotiations going on, but we will lead those negotiations ourselves because we can then, again, as I said, look at our destiny and define the roadmaps that we want to take and where we want to go. There's always a question of finances. We've been lucky in the sense of Medusa is also delivers or will deliver, should I say, accesses to various research and development and educational networks. So the European Union have come on board and they've helped us with a few checks. And eventually this will lead into Northern Africa, but also we're looking at the same to go down Africa because obviously it's to develop not just from a commercial aspect, but also from an educational point of view.
Thank you. Nadia, you want to jump in? What's your view?
Yes, well, I think that we have two approaches here. So as usual, the market is going at a faster pace than the regulatory framework. So if we look at the Portuguese regulatory framework, for example, or even some African frameworks like Kenya, what we see is that they are still framed in a way to consider consortium as the standard for implementation of submarine cables. But the reality is, and Luis just spoke about the Medusa cable. The reality is that, in fact, we are shifting to an OTT-led model where investment is done on a solo basis. And this has implications, of course, on the legal side, because then you have legal frameworks that are not in line with this new trend. If you look at, for example, BEREC's consultation that went on last year on the need to update the licensing framework, and this consultation had a focus on the licensing of submarine cables. BEREC explicitly mentioned the need for the European NRAs to adapt their licensing model for cable submarines. You have some African countries that are already adapting to this reality, especially because of when you consider the laying of cables likely to Africa or the Equiano. So you have South Africa, which is already adapting to this new reality. I believe that Cape Verde, although it's inspired in the EU legislation, is also adapting to this new reality. So what we have in summarizing is the regulatory framework in some countries is still with the consortium model in mind, but then the reality is that this is shifting very rapidly, and the consortium, although it might be still applied in some cases, is not the most common situation for new cables that are being deployed.
Okay, thank you. Before I go to Denise, Martin, you wanna?
When it comes to changing consortia, it used to be incumbents only, obviously.
PTTs.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and that's very rare at this moment. So to say, none at all. Maybe in Australia still, but I don't think anywhere around the globe here. What happened later is that private parties came up and started to build their infrastructures. And the OTTs, they bought their capacity, but after 2017, it really turned and they built their own infrastructures. And obviously we could buy some capacity there. But it's actually very logical that it happened because the speed of deployment, decision-making, everything needed with regards to building such a system would be done much easier, much faster when you have the money and you can just build your own routes into the areas where you would like your own cables to land. So that's what happened. And at this moment, it's a rather strange status because of the 600 systems that we have around the world, about 60, which is only 10%, you would say, is owned or at least partially owned by the OTTs, the big techs. That seems not a lot, but it's close to 65% of the lit capacity around the globe, which is a very strange thing. So if I would like a cable landing into the Netherlands, and actually I'm sharing a new consortium. It's called Pan-Arctic Cable System. And then we have a hard bargain to find money. And finding money, I mean, I don't have to ask the OTTs, but they will just say, well, it'll take ages.
Have a coffee. We'll see you next year.
Let's not do that. So yeah, quite a changed environment, I'd say. So as an answer to your question.
Okay, Denise, get in there.
I would echo what everybody else here has just said. I think the shift is driven in large part by speed. I think a lot of the OTTs and hyperscalers, they're taking this investment in submarine cables and trying to move quicker. By way of example, I was just involved in a negotiation, I think for about 2 years with a system that had more than 10 parties on it. And so when you have 10 different parties from 10 different jurisdictions who are all subject to different regulations, even getting the consortium together can be a real hassle. And so I think a lot of parties who are really strapped for capacity and want to get things moving quickly are taking the build on themselves, but the local telcos are still a critical part of that because you will need them for the landings in many cases, the telecommunications licenses that they need to hold, extending out even to territorial waters boundaries, right? So they do become a critical part of the project. They may just not be the owners on the system. They may be given perhaps a grant of an IRU on the system or some sort of a commercial transaction that follows the actual build because, from a financing standpoint, they can just move quicker. They have more control over the overall build. And so you're seeing a shift away from the consortium. I don't think that the consortium is dead. I think that they still exist in certain contexts. I also think that submarine cable developers are becoming more creative in how they're shaping their systems. So for example, for a bigger system that you're trying to get to, for example, an underdeveloped country, you might build in a branching unit on the system for a future branch rather than contemplating that branch as part of the system from the get-go.
Okay. José, you want to bump in?
Yeah, just to summarize, now who is putting submarine cables are OTTs or neutral wholesale operators like Medusa. Those neutral wholesale operators can be private or public. In Portugal, the last cable from a consortium, some kind of a consortium, was more than 15 years ago. The consortium of incumbents does not exist anymore. There are some consortiums in the Indian Atlantic or in the Asia, but perhaps Singapore, Australia, the operators from those countries are involved. But I do believe what we have now, we have neutral wholesale operators having the cables or OTTs. If we'll have what we'll have in the future, some years ago I thought that hyperscalers data centers could be future owners of systems because they could sell integrated service between two locations, for instance, having the mirror of the data storage and sell that all that integrated. But I really don't see big movements on that sense, and perhaps I misunderstood that at that time, but I'm not very sure. But now you have neutral wholesale operators or OTTs. That's what we have.
So you're saying all consortium is probably not dead, but because we were surprised, or the operators were surprised by, let's say, the OTTs having a load of money, right? And building it themselves. They don't want any hassle and dazzle. They just want to build it and be live within 2 years and not wait 2 years for planning and commissioning and maybe discussing again and again and again, right? And there you go. The funding is sort of not an issue, right? So where do you see is the way forward? Where do you see probable partnerships going on? What is the future? That's actually the question now. We set the pace of what is it today, right? Where do we come from? How is it today? So where's the future? How will it look? Nadia, may I start with you? Do you have any, let's say, ideas? I mean, and how does legal bump in here, especially with regulators?
Well, in terms of regulation, what we have, it's kind of complicated, and for example, if we think and also picking up on the conversation we were having yesterday about data centers and connectivity and tying with the subject that we are dealing with today. If we think about the strategy of, for example, Portugal becoming a very important hub for connectivity and helping Africa to develop its connectivity network, and also picking up on what was said about the nightmare that it is to get the licensing. So the trend is you will have more European or international investors looking into the African continent to establish connectivity. But then it's going to be very complicated to go across so many countries or jurisdictions to establish landing points or branching units. Even branching units are a nightmare because you deal with the question of, okay, do I need a licensing? Don't I need a licensing? What happens when I go through these special economic zones or concession zones, especially in countries where you have oil and gas concessions? So it's a real nightmare in terms of regulatory issues. And then you have the fragmentation in Africa, because you still don't have a common ground in terms of how you treat the framework for the regulatory for the telco sector. So one of the things that you have to establish first is a common ground to address this trend. And I think that in that part, Africa is still has a long way to go. There's still no common ground, and this affects not only intercontinental connectivity, but also intercontinental connectivity. And
How can we support that? Or how should we support this?
I think that, for example, NRAs need to be more cooperative with each other. There are some fora where this is happening. So, for example, there is the fora with Lusophone NRAs, and this is a good start. And this could be emulated for other sub-regional areas in Africa. But this is of the utmost importance. But you also need then government backup for this. And this is one of the most important things that you need, to have a common ground for establishing a common framework to address this new trend that we are seeing. Because then you have to eliminate all these intricacies that are that underlie establishing connectivity between Europe, for example, and Africa, or else you will never be able to fully maximize the potential of European hubs like Portugal with Africa. And I won't go further into the discussion, or else no one else will have the opportunity to chip in.
No, thank you so much. Because the first question which would pop in, with me, we went through COVID, right? We understand now how important internet is, right? We cannot live without it. First you look at your phone, then you have your cup of coffee before you wake up, right? Or after you wake up. That's how it works. I mean, with me at least. I don't know. With you as well, right? And so it is a necessity to have, right? It is almost like bread and butter and milk and water and gas and whatever, right? It should be prioritized, right? I mean, so the urge of working together also with regulators and all the partners, they know all this. So they should get their X into gear and to make that happen, especially as well for the funding. It shouldn't be that difficult because, all the subsea cables and all the connectivity we have around the world, it's not enough. It will blow up anyway. We need more, okay, especially when Africa really comes alive with the young, beautiful population, it's gonna burst. So investments are, guys, the yield is fantastic, right? The return on investment, super. So the urge is there. I think everybody understands, but I think they should drink more a cup of coffee with each other to discuss it and make it happen. Or do I see it wrong? Tell me, Martin.
Where's my coffee?
There you go. I'll buy an espresso later on,
So, well, I would first like to
I'm a bit frustrated about
elaborate
this,
a little bit on your question. What future will bring with regards to
yeah, what is the way forward?
So I actually like certain developments at this stage. To Africa is like a hybrid consortium. It's an OTT in combination with many parties. I also like the way Medusa is approaching it. I like to learn from that, by the way, but you don't tell me much.
Drink coffee with each other.
I do. But it really depends, I think, on when it comes to larger structures, what the actual reason is for getting this cable in. It could be new resilience, as we've learned. I came from sub-optic, and one of the larger elements, subjects that we discussed that would drive new systems is resilience and congestion. So if you want to reduce congestion, you need to go via a different route. So it could, and that increases
We just
resilience.
this morning
Yeah.
I mean, we heard about the Red Sea, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So and there could be reasons for research data. There could be commercial reasons to build a system, and all those different reasons. And it could be new undeveloped countries, obviously, as well.
Connect the unconnected,
Yeah.
for instance.
So that's all different reasons, and all those different approaches have different ways of getting funded, different ways of getting supported by governments or in Europe, for instance, you've got the Connecting Europe Fund Digital, and I know that my neighbor here is a good friend of them. This European fund actually stimulates parties to invest in cables, and the reason why they can't do that anymore is because of the OTTs. To be honest, it's really, there's no way to compete with the bandwidth that's being laid down the world without getting funded.
But it's not always the competitive edge which is there. It's also the morale we have, you know, to.
Yeah. So you need governments to step in. You need European Commission to step in to help you, and that actually does happen. But it's still a very lengthy, very.
So what do we need to have? We need to have an like we had an electricity outage. We need to have a week internet outage before they wake up.
What happens is that special purpose vehicles are being built, also headed by governments, and those special purpose vehicles, you can basically roll them out around Africa as well. You predefine the course, and also you predefine the funding needs that you have. And it's easier way to get into contact with, for instance, OTTs at this stage or other parties. I'm working something like that now in Europe. It's called the European SPV. And in this SPV, we are combining public money with commercial money, and we're kind of free to deploy whatever we want in it. That's not exactly, but that's how it should be able to work. If you connect with CEF Digital, they have Hadea watching that very closely. So your work packages have to be in order. You have to make sure that you follow everything that you've actually asked for. But the next stage, so once you've taken out the bit that has the most risk in it, you could then easily go to parties with the bigger money, like the financial institutes, and say, hey, I've got a viable business case now. The risk has been taken out. The survey has been done. Let's see if we can get money from, I don't know, Hong Kong maybe.
Singapore. Singapore.
Anywhere. Yeah. So that is a method that.
But how long are you talking about? Is this again another committee checking with another committee, checking another committee, helping another committee 2-3 years down the line?
You should limit the money that you ask from the public authority, and only spend it on the risk avoidance. Yeah. Which creates a better business case in the end, and you can then have an easier time to get your money in on.
Okay, good initiative.
The works. Yeah. That's what I've learned from Medusa.
All right, okay. George, closing. What is the message that we can give the audience? What should they look forward to or look out for, or what are your, let's say, what's your message to the world?
Try to think not only in the submarine cables, but you'll have to think strategically as a whole. And you'll have to consider interconnection. Submarine cables are interconnections, but also terrestrial interconnections. And above all, data centers, data storage, and energy. You'll have to think this.
The full Monty.
The full Monty. Of course, public investment will be needed, and public support that can be obtained through the national governments or through those kind of programs CEF2. European Union began to tackle these 4 years ago in the concept of the European Union data gateway platforms, and afterwards those nice phrases that Europe won't be an island in the digital ocean. But the only thing I saw, perhaps I'm not well informed, was CEF2 program. By the way, it's excellent, but it's not enough. But that program can support interconnection from European Union to outside Europe. And Africa is obviously a very good example.
Oh, and then yesterday we had Benoit here on the panel from the European Investment Bank. So he also mentioned that even if with cautious, because it's public money, right, which is good, but still spending money, you know, and spending it as well on cables in and around Africa, which is a good thing. Nadia, may I ask you your takeaway for the audience here, please?
Okay, and well, just picking up on what Martin was saying, effectively, one of the issues that is driving the deployment of submarine cables is precisely resilience. That's one of the vectors, and it's one of the issues that comes across when you start thinking about what is the need. So ensure resilience, and if you think about that, and if you think of the need to establish a bridge between Europe and Africa, you have to have the mindset that we also need to have regulatory bridges, not regulatory gaps. So if we want resilient and secure and open digital corridors, we need to also have more coffees between stakeholders. And this is an idea that I think must be reinforced.
Thank you. And you know what? Go to Ethiopia, get your coffee over there. It's fantastic. It's amazing. Denise, please, what is your takeaway?
I think my takeaway, if you're a future cable owner who wants to build a system in the near term, plan early, no matter whether you're building the system yourself or whether you're going in it with a consortium, you need to be considering all of those regulatory frameworks from the get-go. You know, there's multiple frameworks. For example, the United States is always considered the long pole in the tent from a national security standpoint. Foreign ownership, so forth, is scrutinized very heavily. And even if you have a system touching the United States, they might scrutinize the equipment on the entire system, right? And so there's a lot to consider if you're a cable operator or owner. But to end on an optimistic note, I do feel like, you know, policy moves slowly, yes, but I think that there are initiatives to try to think about harmonization a little bit more directly with different organizations and really facilitating international collaboration. So, for example,
and getting the full picture, as Jose said, you know?
Yeah, there was the New York joint statement that has been not acceded to, but that many other parties and jurisdictions have signed on to, and it really talks about collaboration in the industry to facilitate not only quicker cable builds, but also maintenance. You know, you've got cabotage rules that may prevent a ship from getting into territorial waters in many instances. So there's that, and then there's also the ITU Committee on Submarine Cables that was developed in combination with ICPC. So I do think that there's some positives here from a policy standpoint. Hopefully we'll get there eventually, but I do love the idea of just having more coffee.
There you go. You see? My message is getting there. My message is getting there. Luis, please. What should people look out for?
Well, we've been very, very opportunistic in a sense of when we knocked on the doors of the Northern African countries and we said to them that their cables were running out of life, were exceedingly breaking the capacity, and we actually brought the solutions to them. So it was no-brainer for them to sign. Saying that, from a Southern Europe perspective, luckily it's one European Union, and it hasn't been a problem. Actually approached the locals to actually put in the landing points. Saying that, it hasn't been an easy task either. because landing in country X or country Y, the incumbent looks at you and says, well, you know, what are you doing in my turf, sort of thing. But then again, the fact that we did have European investment funding, that gives you an open door sort of thing, a joker card. That part is okay. So we've covered Southern Europe, we've covered Northern Africa, but don't forget also that when we go down or we intend to extend, then each of these countries, you'll have a different culture, you'll have a different politics, and then Africa, as we know, is very volatile from a political perspective situation and so on and so on.
But great food. They have great food, man.
But we haven't finished there, because what we've seen as well is that we know that the cables go east, they go west, but what goes in the middle? Perhaps that is something that we need to concentrate on, to actually bring services to the landlocked countries. We've done so with the Africs, and eventually we will look at effectively Medusa to drop down in the middle of Africa and then liberate in that sense those landlocked countries.
Okay. Martin, famous last words?
I hope not my last.
Of this panel.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that specifically resilience in this era of geopolitical stress shouldn't be forgotten. And I'm sure at this moment that there's good conversations being held over some cup of coffee in Brussels at this moment, to see how new parties can be supported with that. I'm pretty sure that Franco Accordino is listening in, and he will definitely hear this as well and see this as a stimulation to go forward with his CEF digital program. And I sincerely hope that something like this also works for Africa. So my takeaway would be, please think of the geopolitical situation. The dependence on open system data cables is immaculate. There's no world trade. There's no financial transactions. There's no exchange of scientific data. There's absolutely nothing left if that breaks. So that's my famous last words for today.
So positive guy, this, yeah. So thank you so much. I would like to thank you, audience, for staying, but actually sticking with us, because you're so hungry and you can go to lunch in 20 seconds. First, I would like to thank, of course, Nadia. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking your time again, as always. And my senior panelist, you got your flight. You'll be on time with your flight. Thank you. See you there. We're going to talk about cybersecurity later on. We have Ines here. We have Rui Barras. We're going to talk about technical whatever. No, submarine. You canceled. You're right. You don't want to see me again. No, that was the point. That's not funny. Anyway, thank you so much. Have lunch. Have a safe flight. Nadia, thank you so much. Big hugs. And see you all in, let's say, an hour. Okay?
Bye-bye, everyone.